Oh, okay, amazing. We are live. I think Auronda is frozen, but I hope everything will come up. I will just do a quick intro. So, hi everyone, and welcome to our art webinar series. My name is Oana Orlova. I'm content manager and marketing manager at LiveArt. For those of you who are not familiar with LiveArt is a Web3 platform for art. So we basically have a Web3 department where we pick blue chip artists to do a Web3 NFT collections with us. I think Auronda is rejoining. So yeah, and also LiveArt has an art market analytics tool which is powered by AI. And what I wanted to show you just briefly is that we have some exciting news. And I would just share my screen. Can you please let me know if the screen sharing works? Can you see my screen?
I can't actually.
Okay. Oh, I see Auronda here. Okay, lovely. We have Auronda back.
So I lost the
Connection.
Yeah, no worries. It happens.
You're back. You're back.
Okay, lovely.
And now we can see the screen, your screen
Amazing.
as well.
A lot of amazing news at at 1 minute. Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly tell our audience about the recent exciting news that we had. This April, we would be launching Human by Yumin Jun drop. Yumin Jun is one of the top Chinese contemporary artists, and he would be entering ordinals, which is pretty exciting. So the collection consists of 1,200 unique digital artworks, where his main characters, if you know, like Yumin Jun is super famous by this smiling pink faces. They would be going like across our human history events, from Big Bang to Bitcoin rise. And just briefly about Yumin Junzo, I am sure Alfredo and Auronda knows even better than I do. But he was mentioned at times as a person of the year. He was pretty popular at Venice Biennale to represent China, and Time magazine described Yumin Jun as "this is the man to paint China." He has a super strong market and amazing auction results. You can see them down below here, and you can also visit Art Price Analytics by LiveArt and check his auction results also here. This is a pretty awesome tool that I often use. And to enter our list, we would be soon sharing more details. And yeah, so stay tuned for more, and thank you so much for listening to me. And so we're here today to discuss how to curate digital art. This is actually what I'm always curious about. And we have here, I think, like the best experts I could actually find to talk about this topic. It's Auronda Scalera and Alfredo Cramerotti. If you can please just introduce yourself, guys, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I can start, Alfredo.
Go for it.
Okay. Briefly, then we are a curatorial duo, and we work bridging contemporary art and digital art. We have a background about digital, Alfredo in journalism, media, and me in photography. We studied, long time ago, digital art. And then 4 years ago, we decided to work with digital art again.
And since then, basically, we put together. We started actually. We will mention later on, probably in the interview, with what was called a sort of editorial project, and about women artists working with new technologies, and then it kind of roll over by that, and we were invited to do a number of things which we really enjoyed, and we still enjoyed quite a lot of it. And I also have a kind of a daytime job, which is a director of the Media Majlis Museum at Northwestern University in Doha, Qatar, where I'm based now, basically. And is a museum on basically art, media, and technology, the confluence of the three, basically. Sorry, I can't hear. Now you're back.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Something weird is happening today. And so you both additional physical art, right?
We work, yes, we work with, because the sound is a bit odd. We work with contemporary art. We come from contemporary art as a career background, let's say, although we both cut our teeth, let's say, in media and design and photography and digital, respectively. And then, but we bring with us the sort of institutional networks of contemporary art, like museums, public galleries, foundations, Venice Biennial pavilions, that kind of thing. And then since we formed this curatorial duo, let's say, we started to focus on bridging, as Auronda was mentioning, the field of contemporary and digital, because we do believe that digital art is an expansion of the contemporary art world. And as the contemporary was an expansion of the modern, as the modern was an expansion of the classical art. And we cannot really talk about contemporary art in the last 50 years without taking in consideration the technological transformation that has impacted the work of artists. And we cannot really talk about contemporary art, without talking about digital as well.
Because for people that work in contemporary art, there is no difference between digital art and contemporary art. Art is art.
Exactly.
It's a convention to make better understand the other people what it is, this new movement that is happening now. But for us that we studied and we work in contemporary art, digital art is part of contemporary art.
Absolutely. We don't choose, artists because of their technique, let's say. We sort of invite artists and select their work because of what they say and what they have to say, and the originality of the content and the direction of the artistic path, let's say, not because of the format or medium or technique they use. That goes without saying.
Thank you so much. You actually touched a topic. I should paraphrase it. So my initial question: how you guys curate the digital art, differentiation between curating physical and. But now I feel like there is. So I would just put it this way: the normal user. A person who something truly valuable, and actually, how does it work for you when you or an art fair?
I didn't catch completely your question because your sound is slowed down so much that it makes it difficult to understand, for me at least.
Yeah, even for me, wrong in your sound.
It's like you're kind of dragging the words forever, which is a very sort of a poetic way of putting questions.
This is like the funniest. But oh, sorry, guys. So have any tips for a normal digital art? What would be your tips? Usually take a look at before picking for the exhibition, for example.
Okay. Well, going back to your first question, I think about curating digital and contemporary. I mean, of course, there are differences. It's not that you need to have a certain awareness about the technology behind an artwork, for instance, and to discuss with the artist and the institution, if there's a museum or a gallery or whatever, or the producer if it is online, for instance, format, the best display solution for that artwork. And it's the same as in contemporary art world. I mean, if you organize an exhibition in a museum or a gallery, of course, you need to take in consideration the context, the physicality of the building, the audience engagement, the way audience interact with the work and through the galleries, for instance. And it's the same as, it's the same approach, basically, when you work with digital art. You just need to, you change the context. You were talking about virtual space rather than physical space, or you were talking about certain technology rather than certain media, for instance. But you need to pay attention to the viewer experience. And that's where, as curator, we start from as well. We start from the context and where art is exhibited, being online or in a physical space. And we take in consideration the viewer experience, how the viewer would experience that work, and what's the best way actually for the artist to show that work and to engage with the audience. Tips, Auronda, you come in with the tips.
Oh gosh. Yeah, we have to consider for sure the experience that is a new word for the contemporary art, because most of the artists, they work in immersive environment, AI, VR, and we need to consider these things because it's a new perception with the viewer, and it's much more engaging with the viewer, and it's really an important thing to consider all the time for us like curator.
And the fact that with digital art, also the viewer can experience the work on a mobile or a tablet. It's also quite a new way of imagining an interaction with an audience, and the participation of the viewers. And it's a weird combination between the classical gallery goers type of approach. You imagine what the gallery goers can experience when they enter a space, and I don't know, a video gamer, for instance, enthusiast, where they basically they engage with a game either online or by themselves. So it's kind of a two worlds that are kind of intermingling, basically, and that's an exciting thing. And as a curators, you really have to take them on board and to take the different nuances on board, and it's and to transfer the skill set from one field, let's say, to the others, and vice versa, and that's the tricky part of it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I've been thinking about like the most recent of Refik Anadol's art in London, but and so I was lucky enough to visit like the amount of visits a lot of other exhibitions they did, where it was like beautifully arranged. It's just throw it out. So after usually normally work with the galleries, spaces. If you can are leading the exhibition, and also what I was curious about, if combine both traditional and digital.
Yeah, if we can mention some of the players, let's say, that can sort of be a sort of an example of this combination, this overlap, this cross pollinations. Auronda, what do you think? What would be a couple of examples?
A couple of gallery, do you mean?
Yes, that was Olina's actually a question.
Yeah, but for sure there is Bitform, that is more than 20 years that they work in this field, and it's one of the pioneer gallery. And we had them even in Art Dubai. And they work at, they, for example, do not consider them a digital art gallery, because even for them is a contemporary art gallery. They chat artists about their concept. And then there is even Gazelle in London, that they work trying to bridge contemporary art and digital art. And what else?
Which they are doing, because they, they founded Gazellio 5 years ago, 6 years ago, or something like that. And they more and more, the programs of the two, Gazelli and Gazellio, are actually combined and intertwined. And this is an exciting way of doing a business, a bit like Pace and Pace Verso, some sort of that sort of a combination somehow. Any other we can think of? Pilevneli in Istanbul. That's also an interesting space. Again, they kind of somehow not really focus on digital art, but on contemporary artists. Also kind of a mid-career established artists expanding into the digital realm, and they doing a decent job. Anyone else?
And then there is even TR Lab, that is based in Shanghai. They focus on Asian artists, or even Sanji Gallery, that is another gallery.
In Seoul, in Korea.
They founded recently, but this focus about global South artists. And
that's to give you a bit of a view. But there are many others, of course, that they embrace this sort of a hybrid approach between contemporary and digital, and not necessarily, pigeonholing themselves in one or the other. It's because, and I think we will see it more and more with new generation of dealers and gallerists working with new generation of artists. It will be just natural to, having a number of artists in your rosters that work digitally, and the output is digital. It can be physical sometimes. It can be taking the form of sculptures or installations or video gaming or whatever. And then you have a number of artists who are actually more studio-based artists, where they need actually the physicality of a studio to produce art. So there won't be sort of just this definition, this classification anymore. I think it would be just naturally hybrid, naturally digital, let's say.
And even the role about gallery is changing, because there are even platforms for digital art, like I don't know, Maker Place,
or TAEX as well. Yeah, exactly. And
they don't have the gallery, but they work in this digital realm, and without have a physical space, but promoting digital artists.
And also commissioning contemporary artists to produce digital works, for instance, as we've seen with Angelo Plessas from TAEX, which was an interesting example.
Yeah, and Makerspace are also doing this curatorial approach they have is beautiful. Actually was also a guest of one of our before she was going to Art Dubai. What I wanted is, again, I wanted actions of mediums, digital artists are XR, and I was wondering preference, but which will win now, and which one you use all of them?
There are many.
I couldn't quite catch your question because the words were dragging.
Which in the future, right?
Yeah, so among artists can use nowadays, such as AI art, which one do you think evolving, and which one you think has
Shogun Chung, for sure.
But you're talking about formats or artists?
I would say the format in
The
general,
formats,
like
well, we think that this hybridity between the physical and the digital is also reflected in the hybridity of the technological formats available today, and which will be more and more available in the near future. If we think about the headsets, for instance, the mixed reality approach, and we can talk about Apple Vision Pro or the Quest or any other sort of a thing. It's amazing because you can really, it's not just about actually seeing things, seeing through being in your environment and with this superposition of other data and information and visuals and sounds, but also you can just enjoy as a massive, kind of a cinema screens in front of you to watch a Hollywood movie if you want. It doesn't have to be, super sort of artistic in that sense. And the fact that you can pinch and drag and things with your fingers, and I think that's hybridity of approach between the physical body and the virtual sort of functioning of the devices. Is the most exciting thing for artists to looking forward to, and for curators as well, because today is still a headset which you wear it but you don't go around with. But maybe
Depends. We see
yes.
We see someone dancing in the middle of the art fair with a headset.
That's true. But in a few years' time, it might be just glasses like you are wearing, Gorena. It will be just sort of that type of smart glasses that overlay a whole virtual layer world, which it can really make the difference in terms of how you experience art and how you experience culture, and also how you experience everyday life, really any type of services at that point. So I think this will be this kind of a mixed reality format will be the one actually which we think it will be more impactful, let's say, in terms of visual art and culture in the next few years.
Yeah, but really, I think that the evolving will be really fast. In the next 1 year, 2 year, everything are going to change in the art and our life.
Thank you so much for sharing. Actually, I post on Instagram, and you were wearing the Apple Vision Pro on in the gallery. How was it? What was more about it?
I tried the Apple Vision Pro. And was really another experience because you enter in kind of metaverse, in another reality, in a mixed reality where everything can happen. You can interact with a lot of things around you. You can walk and talk with the other avatar, interact with the object, stuff, and play. And it's really, you have to learn how to manage this second life.
Yeah, it's true. We have an Apple Vision at the Media Majlis for kind of we're experimenting with some formats for the next exhibition, which opens at the end of August, and trying to implement a different experience for the viewers as well. And it's quite interesting because it's really you embedded in your reality. It's not that you're transported into another world, because you can see your colleagues around you and your environment, but with the overlay of the whole different sort of a way of data and possibility to use your own hands and feet and body movement, actually. And also another thing that maybe we didn't mention, but that would be really a massive change. It would be the haptic approach in terms of new formats and technology, when you will actually having this sort of a bodily sensation when you interact with something. And it could be a video game, as there are now haptic vests at the moment, not much use actually in the art world or for any other purpose for that matter. But we think that as we go ahead, there will be just normal pieces of clothes or gloves or whatever that they give you this kind of a haptic feeling. And it could be a simple, cinema viewing rather than an art performance or a sound piece. Think about it could be electronic music or a classical music, but when you have the haptic element added on that could be actually quite an interesting experience as a very personal and intimate type of sort of experience.
The next step is to simulate all the six senses. For example, there are some galleries all around the world, or like a artist space in Dubai, that they work with simulating six senses when you enter in the gallery, even with the smell, with scent that they try to replace with in real life scent if you enter in the gallery.
Oh, they kind of stimulate your senses to, imagine a number of things, actually, also through very subtle, subtle sort of a senses like smell, which is super sensitive, but not so very used in culture, for instance, except in food and cooking.
It's actually beautiful. I know there is also another space in Dubai that it's a whole immersive experience. From the audience, I will put it up just to shorten. I think they see museums in their collections in the.
I can take this question as the institutional beast in the room. I do think actually museums are naturally, I would say, cautious, and they're cautious by definition, especially if they are public museums and they have a sort of a public grant or taxpayer money to invested into them, because you don't want to, having run museums actually and still running museum, you don't want to invest money and into something that's you're not completely sure it will be relevant for the next generation. Museums have this kind of a viewing of for 50 years, for 100 years. They kind of try to imagine what is, especially in collecting, in terms of collecting intelligence, you're trying to figure it out what is a significant piece of human culture now to collect it for the use of generation 2, 3, 4 generation down the line, and to see how it can be still relevant and meaningful for those generation down the line. So obviously they are cautious in terms of digital art because it's a very rapidly evolving set of technologies, and we've seen, with basic things like celluloid film or cassette tapes or vinyls, you do have this sort of a cultural artifacts and product that they become obsolete in a matter of generation, like in 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. I mean, it's so you do need to pay a specific attention to this technical aspect of it. That said, museums are also evolving with society. They are evolving because artists are evolving and the artistic practices are evolving. We are not just having artists using, scalpel or paintbrushes since a number of years now. So we do have artists experimenting with new format, embracing new technology, making work with whatever tools and medium they have available. And the the function of a museum is actually to create some sort of a validity for this work, because an artwork is, the validity of an artwork is not dictated by one person. For sure, it's not dictated by the artist, it's not dictated by the one curator or one director of museum or one gallerist or art critic. It's dictated, is validated, is not dictated by anyone, is validated through space and through time. So because there is a number of people in a certain number of years and in a certain number of regions who actually recognize that artwork has something to say in terms of, you know, the message, if you want to call the message, but, you know, the importance of the interpretation that comes out of the artwork is relevant for a number of people, a number of groups in society. That is validation for an artwork. And the role of the museum is to identify those artworks and to collect them for future generations. So it's obviously they're cautious. They've always been cautious. It's not just they're cautious with you know, technology or digital art, and they are right to be cautious. I mean, I'm personally involved in that, so I'm completely 100% buy into that. It will change because organically it will change. Organically, you have new format and new artists, and you pay attention to more things. What you need to make sure is the obsolescence of a technology needs to be taken into consideration from the beginning, and you need to create that sort of a procedures or steps through it in order to update that technology for the benefit of the viewers, let's say, in a number of years. And you do have a museum who are specializes in certain conservation of technology now, and they basically lend the technology to other museums in order to reproduce, you know, kind of a film celluloid or cassette tapes or vinyl or whatever. I mean, it's a practical, is basically a standard practice of museum to make sure that there is this sort of a conservation element that is in place for the benefit of humanity as a whole.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that answer. I would just add that the points of examples like museum d'Orsay, comparison to work, I think are since the beginning exploring. So I would say it looks pretty beautiful. I think I'd rather Alfredo would be the one to answer. So Los Angeles Museum, I think it adapted the digital artworks because I'm a super famous Web3 collector donated. What I've been curious about, if donates your artwork, but museum always has a right to reject, right?
I'm struggling to understand your question because of the sound. I'm so sorry.
Can you try to disconnect the sound and reconnect?
Okay, let me. This is weird.
I think you made the example of Lachma accepting a donation of digital art from a collector. Is it right?
Yeah. And the museum has the right to reject, donate something.
It's in my experience is a very tricky balance from the side of the museum. I can hear my echo.
Boy, don't work anymore. I reconnect.
Okay, let me do it. Thank you so much.
hopefully will work now. Better.
Is this better?
Yes. Try
Really?
again.
Okay.
Now I can hear you normally.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Amazing, guys. It's lovely. What I wanted to ask is basically, museum has the right to reject an offer from the collector to accept an artwork in its collection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Due to the reasons that Alfredo mentioned before.
Yes, actually, well. There are a couple of reasons why a museum can reject a collection, more than two probably. First is that the capacity of the museum to actually add a number of works to their collection that requires a certain standard of conservation and registration and insurance and things like that. Let's not forget, it's not that only you give the work to a museum and that's it. I mean, the museum has to take it on board. It has a legal duty to take care of the collection, and then to preserve it for future generation. And that's the definition of the ICOM, the museum definition of the ICOM, the International Council of Museums. So it's, and to present to the audience, to mediate to the audience, and to make sure the interpretation is right. So whatever you accept an artwork, or either you buy or you accept a donation, you need to think about it if you have the capacity to take care of that museum as you're supposed to do it for the future. The second reason why my rejected is because possibly the museum doesn't want to be associated with the collector in particular. There is the flip side of a museum accepting a collection or a selection of work donated by a collector, is that collection became validated by the museum. And the collector might, on purpose, actually donating a number of works to a museum as a gift for the benefit of the public and the benefit of humanity. The flip side is that the rest of the collection will become associated with that donation too, because the names goes into the museum, and by association, the rest of the collection will also be somehow validated. And that's a balance that the museum needs to think about it and be very, very clear in what they do actually with their board. And then there are other reasons as well. Actually, it might be that, I don't know, it's just too delicate or too big or too complicated to conserve and to show to the audience as well, actually. And it's not suitable for the museum because maybe it's outside the scope of the museum, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of reasons why a museum might reject a donation, both practical and ethical, I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering this. What I wanted also to ask, I was reading one of your interviews, and I heard the definition robotic art, and I started Googling, and in my head it felt like a performance art in a way, only without a human. So this question is like super random, but do you see any connection between performance art and robotic art, or not? And if you can also provide your definition of robotic art, this would be amazing.
Then if you want to start from the beginning, for sure we can take like an example like Nanjum Pike or Stellark, that they are pioneer about kind of robot. Then Stellark for sure is the father of robotic art because he merged like a performance and robot, and was really an interesting artist because now all the artists trying to merge robotic and performance or robotic and art, but it's a thing that come from long time ago. And I mean, I would say that this robotic art is a huge box where you can put performance and other kind of technique, let's say, but it's not only related with the performance. It's about innovation. It was about a vision of the future. It's about the merge between human and machine that step by step now is much more closer, because now, for example, there are companies that put chip in your brain, chip in your body.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a big box, and it can include performance, but also kind of a participatory arts, for instance, and this idea of interaction between human and machine. Usually, when we imagine participatory art between human and human, there's nothing would stop us to think about participation between human and machine as being a valid art form. So it's something that is not necessarily strictly related to performance. It also depends what type of work it is, because some artists are basically instructing a robot or machine to perform certain tasks. Some other artists are rather actually building database out of their work, and that's actually, you mentioned earlier, Auronda, So Chang. She's basically building database out of her brainscape while producing work, and then instruction coding basically, and instructing the robot to perform arts based on that database. So it's like another So Chang, and they when they do work together to produce work. So it's a bit like almost a co-authoring work rather than a performance work in that sense. So it really depends on the approach of the artist when using a robot.
Thank you so much. And Auronda, it caught my attention. You were talking about chip inserted in your body. And what would be the purpose? And if you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Then depends, because, for example, Elon Musk recently, tried to insert in the body this chip. Is that the purpose is different for instance, for example, if you want to, for medical things, or for economic things, even to collect your data. And this is another issue, because, for example, who collect your data, who own your data, what they are doing with your data. And recently, Alfredo, I saw that the Northwest University made this experiment with their students, because they asked them if they are keen to insert in their body a chip, and they replied yes, 80% of them. That means that the new generation are not really concerned about like us. I mean,
As long as you have control on your data, really, that's the data rights is the critical key. I mean, we know some colleagues and friends who has their chip implanted in the wrist, and they use it to go on the metro and pay directly with their chip, actually, when they access the metro or something like that. They don't use it for much else at the moment, but it's not about the being chipped or not chipped. It's about how do you make sure that your data rights are, which is actually something that Krista Kim really bang on it with her work. Having data rights recognized as a human rights. We have the Constitution of Human Rights. We don't have anything about data rights at the moment on an international, on a global level. And that's something that needs to be addressed, because it's you can implant whatever chip you want and use it forever you want. As long as you're in control of how you want to share that data, that's okay. And the problem is become when you don't know where the data go. and who's using your data and for what purposes, because that's the problem. That's, that's the Web 2, basically, not the Web 3.
Actually, I'm quite exciting to insert a chip in my body.
Yeah, I saw Auronda for some reason that you actually made it before. Just I don't know, but maybe I just I misunderstood because I am like the active follower of your Instagram, and I'm watching everything. It's like my digital.
Was a photo of someone else.
yeah.
Then I would like then probably
You're considering it. Yes.
I'm considering to shipping my body.
Keep us posted. Keep us posted.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the last question, I know you guys have a beautiful vision for this, and you actually once contributed to Fuel Arts report, and you made kind of like, you shared a lot of tips on how to collect digital art. So this is what I wanted to ask you: how to collect digital art? What would be the main reason to actually purchase digital art in your perspective?
Then for sure, first of all, enjoy. This is the first purpose. Enjoy your collection, enjoy the artist. And then for a collector point of view, we suggest to meet the artist in their studio, preferably, and talk with them, discover their history, how they started, which is their purpose in the future, and support them, and then visit some art fair, and then talk with gallerists and ask them to suggest some artwork. Talk with a serious gallery, and this is for sure few.
It's a bit of a part-time job, in a way that you're right. Actually, I think you need to inform as much as you can, compatible with your time availability somehow. I wanted to ask, actually, meeting the artists, there are two schools there, actually, in terms of collecting. Those who really, really want to meet the artists because they collect their work only if they meet the artist and they kind of like the artist in a way. And those who really don't want to meet the artist and they really focus on artworks. And because for them, the essential part, the what speaks to them is not the artist, is actually the artwork in that sense. So, and it's, I think is a personal approach. There's no right or wrong attitude. What do you think? I mean, I'm more leaning on the artwork than the artist, but it's
but there are two approaches. Depend if you collect for pleasure or if you collect for investment.
Also, yes,
a big gap between these two purposes. If you collect for investment, you don't want to meet the artist. There is only
not necessarily, yes, because maybe you flip it and you probably prefer to stay aloof. But
and if you collect for pleasure, I mean, it's completely different because it's most enjoyable, in my opinion.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I would rather focus on the art. I mean, I don't collect as a principle, so I'm not collecting, and I have this ethical decision made like 20 years ago, which in curating I need to have my mental distance, and I don't. But probably if I'm collecting ancient art, which is another which is not part of my work, so there's no conflict of interest there. Ancient small portrait from 1300 to 1700. I really enjoy that. But however, if I would collect contemporary art, let's say, I would probably go for the artwork approach, because to me, I mean, there are great artwork made in the past that we now know their authors were actually quite a despicable person. And how do you deal with that? I mean, you just discard the whole body of work and over because you discover that that person was some sort of not so nice person, or you just focus on the artwork because it still speaks to you. And how does it speak after you discover that facts, for instance? That's is a very ethical dimension of it. It's really interesting. As over dinner is a great conversation usually.
It's a beautiful actual question. I would think I would go with the artist, honestly. I love to meet people. I love in real life events, so I would go with the artist approach. And Auronda, now I'm curious, do you collect or do you have the same like scenes that Alfredo does? You're trying to
I collect.
Okay.
I have a collection about art, and I enjoy to collect art.
What I also was super curious about, as Auronda started talking and answering this question, she said like it's important to go to the galleries, talk with the galleries, go to art fairs, talk to the artists, like if you want to. And what I always felt that art world feels a little bit niche, and people can feel a little bit intimidated. And maybe you have some tips about how not to feel as a newcomer in this world, how to actually be more bold to talk to people, to meet art people.
For example, in the digital world, let's say, it's much more inclusive and less intimidating for collector and viewer and everyone. Let's say that contemporary art, in the opposite way, is a bit more scary.
It's kind of elitist, let's say it. And the digital world is less elitist because it's much more inclusive, because it kind of about this idea of decentralization and peer review. I think is much more open to people who don't know anything and are really happy to bring them into and having conversation about how it is made, etc., etc. So it's not as elitist as the contemporary art world. Now that the two are merging slowly, we will see some different approach from both sides. You will see some big name in terms of digital art, kind of filtering already who they want to talk to. And we can see a lot of kind of established contemporary artists actually being quite more open if they expand into the digital realm, because they really want to meet this new sort of cohort of people, being that other artists or collector or dealers. So there is interesting sort of dynamics at the moment between the two.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing everything. And I always do this by the end of the webinar. If you, Auronda or Alfredo, feel like there is anything else you want to answer or talk about, just use this time to do it.
There is a question about the environmental impact of digital art in the comments.
Yes, a question. We cannot read anymore, but there were.
I can read it because I stay logged in, and I can read it to you.
Yeah.
It says another from Larissa, another question: because of the relevance of the digital power, digital art consume a lot of energy, and they are being criticized for their contribution to greenhouses gas emissions. So, coming from this environmental concern, where do you see go from here? How can there be unified parameter? Yes, there were a lot of criticism about the criticism came from actually the mining of Bitcoins, just to make it very, very clear. So the whole development of cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, that was actually proof of work rather than proof of stake. I mean, it was, this kind of a mining factories of work frames, computer. They were consuming huge amounts of electricity. Now it changed also for cryptocurrencies. Ethereum went from kind of the first type to proof of work to the second type, proof of stake, with less consumption, much less consumption. Digital art, actually, if you compare digital art and even if it doesn't have to be associated to minting, by the way. First of all, an artwork, a digital artwork, can be minted as an NFT or not. And the second consideration, that if you consider the amount of carbon emission that coming from the actually contemporary artwork markets, and not only the making of the artwork, but the presenting of the art, the packing of the artwork, the shipping of the artwork to fairs, to galleries, back to the studio of the artist, and then back to fairs again, and back to the house of the collector, and back again. I mean, it's a huge amount of carbon emission. And we have the Gallery Coalition now, Contemporary Gallery Coalition, that try to set up certain standards to ship as much as is possible by sea freight rather than by plane, to lower the carbon emission. Because, I mean, in the contemporary artwork, also imagine all the construction that's going on in a museum for setting up an exhibition, for instance. All the building material, all the contractor, the power implied in the construction of the exhibition, the dismantling of the exhibition, the shipping away of the material, as well as the artwork. If you consider the whole cycle of an artwork and the different presentation and iteration of that artwork during 20, 30, 40 years, the amount of carbon emission that digital art produces is illusory. So I think it's, we need to make it very, very clear here that there's no art that has a lower impact in terms of carbon emission. Everything is actually has an impact, and digital as well as physical. And there are some measures to tackle that. And if you're minting, you go to proof of stake rather than proof of work. If you try to mint in sort of a certain hours, that is less consumption in terms of energy. And if you're dealing with physical art, actually, you try to minimize the waste in terms of packing material and plastic and wrapping up, and you try to ship by sea instead of by plane. So there is a number of things that can be done, but obviously it's not that there's a miraculously zero carbon emission if you produce an artwork.
There is someone else that asked a question, but I cannot see what was related.
No, I don't know. I don't know what he means.
Yeah, I'm also not sure. We have a comment to you, Alfredo. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. What I actually wanted to add here quickly, I don't remember the name of the startup. It was mainly operated in traditional art world. What they did, they created plastic boxes to transfer art. They put like the plastic down from the ocean. They created a reusable plastic boxes, and it was actually a beautiful startup. I'm sorry, I don't remember its name. And the beautiful reason behind it, I think, so very Gagosian, he has like 3 storages, and one of his storages for art is not used by art and artworks. It is used to keep the containers he transfers his art in, which is like crazy. So yeah, it's a beautiful startup.
As long as they're reusable, I think is great, because
Exactly.
I mean, there's at the moment most of the wrapping material and packing and crating is just wasted. Most of it.
Yeah. And thank you so much. And I wanted to say again an amazing thank you to Alfredo and Auronda. I honestly, every time I talk to you guys, it feels like I'm having a dinner. It's super chilled and fulfilling, and
well, it should be.
it should be, yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I hope we will meet again next time and you will share more. And for our audience, I will see you next week. We will be having an amazing webinar about digital art scene in London, and it should be super exciting. Thank you guys again.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thank you, and thanks for the audience. Thank you.